Ironically, our next speaker, Andrew Revkin, we met online. This is very fitting for someone who blankets the World Wide Web in so many ways. As a journalist, blogger, professor, scientist, interviewer, traveler, writer of movies and documentaries, a musician and songwriter of bluegrass band Uncle Wade, last but not least, he's a dad. I think this guy has all parts of life pretty much covered. Andrew's vision for Alaska and Arctic comes from his many trips to this region, reporting for the New York Times. Please give a loud welcome for Andrew Revkin.
Very much. It's a privilege to be here with people who have spent a heck of a lot more time in this wonderful place than I ever have. I've only actually been close to it. I've not been in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I've been on the North Slope. I was there at a very different season than the one you saw depicted here earlier. And my take-home impressions of what we've just heard from Bill McKibben and Sarah and the scientists and in the magnificent photography that you saw are a couple of things. One is resilience. The Gwich'in and the other people I've met on the fringes of our wonderful world, far from where most of us live, the peoples and the ecosystems are incredibly resilient. As Bill said of the Adirondacks, there's this amazing ability in nature to recuperate and to surprise us with its durability if we give it a little space. Now, though, we're inching up toward these global limits. Our whole definition of a reserve or of having a conservation value was almost always about a particular place, like this one, or the Mayanas Gorge near here, or the Hudson River near where I live. So you're always kind of thinking about how do we preserve the system, how do we get these PCBs out. Now, though, as we butt up against global limits, it's become clear that that vision from the 1960s that sounded kind of hokey, you know, the world really is one village, we do live on a small planet, all those things are actually being now concretely confirmed by scientists. There are limits to the atmosphere. We spent hundreds of years pretending there weren't, and now there clearly are. Determining how much is too much, whether it's warming, or how little is too little, in terms of the conservation spaces on our planet, those aren't scientifically delineated. That's why we're at this, you'll find as you talk to other people your age, the young people here, or older people, you'll always find differences of views on what a refuge should be. And what I think we all have to start to do now is to understand that those values differences, people come to the same science, the same picture even, with a different reaction based on their values, their upbringing. I think we went through a sort of a 20th century environmental movement that was largely framed around two things. Woe is me, shame on you. It was always someone else's fault. And you know, oh my God. So the resilience message says to me there's plenty of reason for optimism. The potential of youth, particularly, to get busy. Whether it's going to my website, go to .earth, nytimes.com/DOTEARTH, and you'll see right there, right now, the Fish and Wildlife System is taking input from you, from America, on what a national wildlife refuge should be in this new century, the second century of the system. So you can kind of get engaged and make sure you contact your elected officials. Those of you who are over 18 have this other magical potential. It's called voting. But those of you even who are under 18 can get busy on Twitter and getting ready for that moment when you become part of the system that takes us from these distant places that are part of America's patrimony now to Washington, D.C., which is where a lot of decisions get made that are important. So think about resilience. In other words, woe is me should go away. Shame on you also has to go away. There are definitely bad actors out there. Greed does dominate some sectors of our society. And thinking about the future, thinking about other constituencies is not everyone's immediate norm. But again, when we get to this global thing, the fact that we're all really in it together, if we don't get comfortable with our differences as human beings and as communities, even as we try to look for ways forward that can preserve these magnificent last vestiges of truly wild places, we're probably not going to make much progress. Yelling tends not to be the best approach to solving a problem. Confronting people's differences, exploring them, looking for overlap, those are the things I think that can lead to progress. Hunters and anglers, fishermen, who might be very conservative politically, are very passionate about these places, so they're part of a constituency that can help preserve them as well. So if I had one message for people on this question of what is a wildlife refuge. You know, it has to come from those issues, a recognition of values, your own values. And by the way, one thing that makes it tough with a place like the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is probably more than 90% of the people who will be debating this, whether in Congress or on the streets, have never been there. So for them, this is all a debate of the imagination. It's not a concrete experience like that wonderful moment you heard about in the tent, when it was the lack of flapping of the tent sides that said something had changed, I better get busy with my camera. And I was lucky enough to get up on the tundra in the middle of winter, 40 below zero, 40-mile-an-hour winds, with scientists trying to understand the system and the changing climate. But you know, I'm a rarity. I communicate what I see, but most of my readers will never have the good luck to be up there. So when something is a debate over an imagined concept, an imagined part of America's patrimony, that does make these challenges harder, because we all are just dealing with our visions. So try, if you can, to find a way to get out in the concrete world, get not just to the ends of the earth, like this place, but get into your own little wild places as well. I'm going to conclude with one thought, that this sense of refuge, it's vital to explore it in the wilderness areas that remain on the planet. But there's a refuge in every little nook of wet place around here. There's a little pond near me. Every spring there are these red efts, E-F-T, these little tiny newt life stage things that come crawling out of the leaves. Thoreau talked about the swamp at the edge of town being as important as the primal wilderness. So make sure that your refuge, your sense of refuge and its place in America's future grows from that feeling, which you can get right here in Greenwich or where everyone is listening to these talks today. So thank you very much.